What is up, high school tech? So one of the things that I think applies to pretty much everybody that I think everybody would appreciate knowing is how to change the HUD of the player. So if you're not familiar with the term HUD, it means heads up display. And that comprises of what the player sees on the screen. It's kind of like a layer in between the viewer and the surroundings. So kind of like an interface to show the user what they have. Like, for instance, their inventory, right at the bottom of the screen would be part of the HUD. Now, you can do more than just show inventory and things like that. You can give information, and you could also change the player's perspective. For instance, you could make them blind by putting just a black layer in between them and what they want to view. So there's several different things that we can do with this feature. So we're going to go over how to actually do that. Okay, so this is you, right? You're sitting here and you've got some sort of very simple node and you're wanting to change the player's HUD. So what's the next step? Well, certainly you can search Google and things like that, but I would highly recommend you stay away from Google and just go to the textbook, see what you can find there, and then after that, go to the Lua API. Get good at searching those resources because they're going to give you the most information. So if we just head over to the Ruben Wardy, we'll start with the textbook, and we look for HUD. Do we see HUD? Well, actually we do. We see it right here. And so we're going to pull it up and just start reading. So here we can see, and this is the first time I've ever pulled up this chapter. Well, not the first time, but at least for today. So we can see here we've got some like a overview of what all we're doing. So you're talking about positioning inside on the screen. This is very important. Text elements, image elements, those are they're going to come in handy and be a lot of fun to mess around with. That's kind of where your blind feature might be tucked in. Changing an element, storing IDs, and other elements. So let's just peruse this chapter real quick. So just so you know, the positioning of any item on the screen is based on just a zeros, or I guess -1 to 1 window. So the screen is effectively like, doesn't matter what screen size you're working with, you have a scale, as it were, that is -1 to 1. Anywhere that you, between -1 and 1, that you define that number, it will put that object. So 0 is smack dab in the middle here. And in this case, it would have to be the middle of the object, I suppose, is right smack dab in the middle. So if you follow this chapter, what you'll end up with is this here, this statistics or score panel, as they call it, and with just a lot of really cool information, really neat stuff. And so we might not complete that exactly, but I'll show you how to kind of look at this example and pull the pertinent information from it. First thing he says is that you need to have the player object. And so where in the world are we supposed to get the player object? Well, there's actually several different ways of doing this. And one, as shown here, they can get _player _by _name method. They can use that class reference or method in order to get the player object. But you don't always have the luxury of knowing the player's name. So you kind of, there's another way, there's many other ways of getting the player object. And in our case, I would say the easiest way to do it would be a callback. So let me demonstrate real quick. Well, you know what? Before I just type something out, let me show you. So right now I'm thinking I need a callback. So where am I going to get a callback? Well, I'm going to go to our Lua API. You can go and click on the Ruben Wardy textbook and get the list, some callbacks, but I want to actually see the full list of callbacks. And so if we click on definition tables, we can then scroll down here and see how the node, how the node is defined. And if we scroll down, we can see, well, there's a lot of things that you can configure. We're looking for something that's going to give us a player object, and that's going to be in the callbacks section. So we can see here, for instance, here's a callback. Now, how do you know whether this callback is going to give you a player object or not? That's going to be inside of the function inputs section. So, of course, all of these callbacks are functions, and they operate using certain inputs, and in this case, POS or position. That's not a player object, so we'll need to move on. So here's something that's very similar to onConstruct, and this is after place node. Now, I guess it would be more appropriate to use this callback here after dig node, considering that's kind of what we are trying to do. You know what? Even better would be on punch. And so maybe you do several different things here. After the node is actually dug, you have a certain callback to handle that, and it does some fun stuff. But let's go ahead and just stick with the on punch, and you can read all about it. The important thing to know about on punch is that by default it calls a certain method, this minetest.register _on _punch node. That handles the breaking of the node and then putting it in your inventory. So bear that in mind, that if you don't define that, so if you overwrite on the on punch callback, it will no longer default to this calling this method, and you'll need to include it. So, and that method there is probably, you'll probably want to adjust and change for your particular ancestry stone, which we can get into on a later date. So, but for now, we're gonna just select this on punch. I would highly recommend that you go through the rest of these callbacks and look for interesting stuff, because quite frankly, there's some really cool stuff, and I'll get ideas reading the callback, but they won't be anywhere close to y'all's ideas. So I'd love to see some interesting ideas expressed through this project. So we're gonna copy this, and I'm noting here that I'm missing the O. I didn't quite capture that entire thing. And if I go into my node, remember that the node is defined by a table. If I could just click on if I could just get my keyboard to work. So the node is defined by a table, and every table element needs to be separated by a comma. So I have, great. So I have added a comma there, and for some reason that didn't paste correctly, or didn't copy it correctly or something. Don't know what happened, but there we go. It's in there. You got to remember my O, and this comma, it's saying, hey, what's wrong with this function? Well, it's missing an end. So go ahead and throw that end on there, and you're probably good. I would recommend just throwing a comma at your last item, so that next time when you add something else, it doesn't trip you up, and it doesn't hurt anything. So there you go. Not that I know of anyways. So on punch. Now, we were talking about changing the HUD. So the first thing we need to do is get a player object. And this is going to be helpful for a lot of different things that you're wanting to do. You need the player object. You need to get that player. And by player object, it's the essence. That's everything that the player is. And then with that object, then you can change the object. You can change that player in just thousands of different ways. So getting the player object is very important. All right, so we've got on punch, and we notice here that it operates with several different inputs. Position, node, which is being punched, I believe, puncher, and then pointed thing. If you want to know specifics on all of those different inputs, check out the Lua API. But for now, all we really care about is the puncher. So what we're going to do is we're going to say, we're going to actually do a little test, and we'll end it here, this lesson. Minetest.chat, and you know how I love the chat send all. Helps us kind of debug, just a quick little method that you can throw some inputs into it and see if it works or not. So we're going to just print the player's name. So if we do minetest.chat send all, we're then going to say puncher dot colon and then get underscore player name right here. Always, as much as you can, use these. If you don't see something in one of these method menus after typing, more than likely you've typed something incorrectly. So it's a good way to kind of check yourself. And nice thing, it actually added the parentheses at the end of that because that is a function. And so that should work. So puncher, and then pluncher. See, I'm great at spelling. So puncher, and VS Code is letting us know that it's actually being used. And if we just save that and go into the game, it should work. So let's try that. Thankfully, I caught my problem here, which I'm sure you saw this as I was typing. But I neglected to add the T at the end of Minetest, which of course would have caused problems. So we're going to save that and then head over to Minetest and fire up the game. Okay, so if I type in the actual node name, node 2, then it pulls it up, and I don't know what this texture is, but hey, it looks really interesting. And then if we actually, so not right click, but left click it, and then up in the chat, we can see that indeed it is typing my name. And in this case, it's not a server, so it's just printing single player. But this will work if you're on a multiplayer server. It'll just print your name. So that helps confirm that indeed we are getting a player object, because this is the functionality that you would expect if you got the player object and then asked for its name, right? So so that is how you get a player object. And since I'm out of time, I'm going to cap it here. Hopefully this is just really good knowledge and important. It helps you in a variety of different areas. Thanks for watching, guys.